Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Tonight on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, series premiere tonight on NBC.
HR tech, work tech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the Work Tech Podcast. Join host George Larocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work-Defined Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Work Tech. It's me, George Larocque, and we've got some big industry news. You might have seen recently that Humareso acquired an analytics company called Rhabit Analytics, and I've got the founders of both companies here to talk about the deal and share it with us. My old friend John Baldino and a new friend Kevin Kelly. Welcome.
Thanks, George.
Let's start with introductions. John. Nobody knows who you are, so let's start with you. No, everybody knows who you are. Just in case, though, tell us about yourself quickly and Humareso.
Thank you. Yes, so John Baldino, founder and president of Humareso, which is a HR consulting firm, primarily U.S.-based, some international work, but most of it is U.S.-based. Started the firm over 12 years ago now. I've been in HR for well over 30 years. So it's been a great transition over the last 12 plus in terms of moving from sort of corporate into opening up a consulting firm. As you know, we've grown quite a bit, and so excited to have this next chapter start with Kevin and Rhabit Analytics.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what the future looks like now. And Kevin, welcome. It's been great to meet you. Let's hear about yourself a little bit and about Rhabit.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Kelly. I'm one of the founders and CEOs of Rhabit Analytics. We started out in Pittsburgh. That's where we founded the company about 7 years ago. Our background is organizational psychology, so we came at this from a very scientific background. We worked at a company called DDI before we broke out and started Rhabit. And with that consulting background, we really wanted to go into tech. I've loved tech and product my entire life. I love building digital tools. I love building software. And with Rhabit, we had this opportunity where we felt like that feedback as a piece of the sort of talent management infrastructure was really underserviced. And as we began to explore that over time, we would develop a number of solutions in performance management, employee assessment, employee engagement measurement. And the other piece of that was we wanted to bring some of the things that we saw with very mobile-friendly technologies, a mobile-first focus, and a lot of the things at the time were sort of emerging around gamification. And so we thought there were a lot of patterns that we could bring in from the video game industry into these experiences to make an HR tool that people actually loved playing with and would use on a regular basis happily, but at the same time would give you real usable data and real feedback around the behaviors of people you were working with, and that could be extended a long way. So, as we went on and grew, this opportunity happened where we had a wonderful consulting opportunity to move into a consulting business where they can really leverage our technology. And it's just a supernatural fit, and we're very excited about everything. So thanks for having me on. I'll love to talk some more about why we're here and everything too. But that's just a little background on where we are and where we came from.
That's a great foundation. Thank you. A great place to start. So, John, you're coming at this deal understanding the service business that Humareso is, why now? What did you see in everything that Kevin just laid out? And did you have experience with the product, or how did it all come together for you?
Yeah, I mean, so this is really fascinating because Kevin when we first talked, Kevin said it was Pac-Man for HR when it came to tech, and I was like, well, I love Pac-Man, so I'm in, right? So this idea of gamification, I like that Kevin sort of teed that up, because what we see on the consulting side of things, one, is I'd say the business owner that we get to deal with, or the C-suite executive that we're chatting with, feeling like there's so much modularization of tech out there that it really becomes easy to ignore or overlook. We're paying X amount of dollars with this module, that module, building on whatever their base platform or platforms might be. We're not really getting the level of engagement that we want. And so from a consulting firm standpoint, for us, the first question is always, as they share that, is, what is it you want to know? So George, to answer one part of your question, like, that's what I think where I see this year and the next couple of years being is, do I even know if this thing is measuring what it's intended to measure? Do I even know, not just be told it is, but really know that this is going to be applicable? It's really going to give me insight into what's happening with my talent. And the second piece of that is, my talent is really demanding an understanding of how I can grow, move forward. Am I hitting the marks? And does my manager even know what the marks are for me to hit? It's easy when it's quota. When it's not quota in the work that I'm doing, do they really know? And we continue to come across more and more organizations where managers are promoted because they were successful worker bees. Love that. But they're not really set up for success. And so when they're sitting to do a performance or engagement or leadership type discussion with an employee, it's in a vacuum, because they haven't really been invested in at that level to help direct some of this as well. So that's kind of what we're seeing, and why it made sense to start having conversations with Rhabit. Or I would say one step back for Humareso, just in general, start to look at what's out there, what would make sense. And it made more sense for us to own it instead of just trying to shoehorn the various different platforms, as we know, to say, and for us to do our own veracity of all of these independent products. Really, I think it was time for Humareso to kind of dig its heels in and say, we're going to bring it to you.
Yeah. So the Humareso customer base, it sounds like you've been asked to address some issues that a product like this might have helped avoid or would help solve. Is that fair enough?
Here's the Philadelphia response, right? So sometimes they don't even know what they're asking at that level, other than, I don't know what's wrong with people. Nobody wants to work. Even something like that, where you're like, ooh, tell me more about that. Where does that vibe comes from? Right? Well, I'm here. It comes from somewhere. Where does it come from? Well, I'm here early in the morning and I stay till late at night. Yeah, you own the business. Where is that expectation level coming from? Mm-hmm. And so, performance management for somebody who started with 5 people and has grown their organization to 105 to 505, they still may be operating from a very skewed view of what performance management is. It's really, dictatorship. I need you to be micromanaged to get done what I think you have to get done. It's not what it is. And it's a much more expansive view once you get to 500, 5,000, as you know. And so I don't know that we've really done a great, from our vantage point, we still are running into plenty of organizations that are just in a huge gap in how to get people to be excited about where they can get to, versus just the whole presenteeism, quiet quitting, all of the phraseology right through the years of being the reality that people feel like they have to live with, and then just become curmudgeons about. We can move beyond that.
Yep. So I'm a big supporter, believer in behavioral science. There's always a debate over whether assessments work. And every time someone wants to debate that with me, show me a person who wants to debate or say that they don't work, I'll show you someone who.
Have you ever wondered what really makes a generation tick? Who gets to pick the name? And why the slang keeps changing? Don't worry, I can help. My name's Dr. Megan Grace. On #Gen Z, I share the voices and experiences of Generation Z, how they're different from other generations, what moves them, and why they do what they do. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords and the stereotypes to dive into real conversations and the insights that matter to making intergenerational collaboration a reality. You can catch #Gen Z on the Redefine podcast network and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Was a part of an implementation that wasn't done well. Someone just like bought an assessment off the shelf and threw it at their employees and wasn't trained, or, I've seen it work in the field. But you've got to have the right science, the right resources engaged. So big supporter here. And what's interesting, Kevin, I'm going to shift this to you a little bit. When I looked at your website and then listening to John, I'm hearing, higher level talent management issues. I'm hearing feedback, performance.
Yep.
Classically we use assessments also in hiring, but I'm also it's Rhabit Analytics. So help me with where it could be that this product can plug in on all of those things. But is that the case?
So we do three main solutions that we offer here at Rhabit. Those are performance management, employee engagement, and leadership development and assessment. So you have those three things. Now, for us, behavior is a key part of all of those in that stack. So I'm talking about observed behavior. So if you're a manager, part of your development is learning how to use some skills that you might not have naturally gotten as an individual contributor. You've got things like the ability to delegate work, the ability to coach another employee, to provide feedback, to communicate. These are things that could be completely orthogonal to your success of what made you good enough to be promoted into a leadership position in the organization. And so now part of your development is to acquire those skills. Part of your performance is to exercise those skills. And guess what? As a leader, when you are delegating well, when you are coaching well, when you are providing feedback well, you create an environment where the employee is really engaged. So part of employee engagement, this idea of these annual engagement surveys where you would ask people, like, do they intend to stay? Do they have opportunities for growth? Those things, these great places to work surveys and things, they have their function. But what we would say scientifically is that there's a very strong correlation between the observed behaviors of the leader and the effect that that has on the employee and their actual intent to stay, the way that they're retained. So we look at that as the feedback of observed behavior underpins these three things. And if what you mix with this is for engagement, you care about the behaviors of the manager layer, and then the behaviors of policy and procedure of the organization. And that kind of comes together to make the things that you measure in a work culture. Okay. In the performance context, now you bring in work product quality and timeliness. So now it's like, not only did I make my widgets and they were of sufficient quality and I delivered them on time, but what was I like to interpersonally work with as I did that, as I guided that piece, and bringing that as a real performance measurement. And then moving over into leadership development, it's where am I at with these behaviors today, and what are some skills, and how can I pair this with coaching or other interventions to really lift those and have those grow over time. And the overtime part's a big thing. We were one of the things that we innovated here at Rhabit is we were one of the very few companies to bring in a longitudinal measure into engagement and into what classically would be seen as like a 360 survey. We have a remeasurement and time component where we resample over time to really understand the change in these things. Because John, I'm sure, has seen this in the real world, which is you run an engagement survey and then you get some feedback and leadership freaks out and they do something. And then they don't 2 years go by and they run another engagement survey, and they have no idea if like the things that they did in that short term had an effect. Were changes from the macro environment? Did capital just get cheaper and then we hired more people, or did we have some new big customer that changed things and that's why everybody's happy now? Or did we have layoffs and that's why everybody said? You don't know, because we weren't measuring anything over that time. And so what we wanted to do was really make measurement tools that could bring in that longitudinal piece. And then the trick is to figure out how you can make that experience really pleasant so that people don't get fatigued out in the survey process.
Yes.
And so that's where we kind of sit. So those 3 core solutions with an overarching theme of behavior, of this gamification, of longitudinal measurement. And that's kind of where that all sits in what we do.
Right. And so the analytics sort of arch over
is downstream. So we collect everything, and now you've got this great cross section from a data standpoint of, I know work product quality and timeliness. So they reached these objectives, they did it well. I know how the people around them behaved. Those managers, they got feedback on their ability to build trust, on their ability to act professionally, to communicate well. And then I've got signals about how it feels for all the other people in the periphery of the organization to work there. Do they feel like they have opportunities for growth? Do they feel like they understand the context of what they're contributing? And we mesh these things together, and now we get a very clear picture of who are the effective people in the organization, who are the people that drive satisfaction in their workers, and what are the behaviors like for the managers, for the people with the best work product delivery.
Yep.
This is the analysis side of what we get to on the downstream. But that doesn't happen unless you have a good measurement process. And that's where we started.
And I would say, I mean, obviously I would say yes to everything Kevin just shared, but I would add to it by saying we're still in a world where the highest percentage of C-suite executives find affirmation in knowing that an engagement survey, for example, has been distributed annually. That action becomes the end, as opposed to what that is supposed to be revealing or unveiling about what's happening in the organization, and then creating a real plan behind it. It's left to HR, who has classically limited power to really enact some of the broad-based changes that are desired. Classically, I'm not saying everywhere, but classically, right? And though the ask may be very timely, it might seem very pertinent even to leadership. It comes back to budget, or it comes back to the robustness of the change management that might be needed, and those are usually the limiters right off the bat. And so then you just sit with that's how you back into, well, we do a survey every year. Everybody can tell us what's going on.
We do engagement.
Right.
We sent out a 60-item survey. We engaged.
Right.
We did it.
Yeah. And I know we all believe in employee engagement and we believe in the measurement, but I think that model that you're talking about, the annual survey.
When your investors, customers, and workers demand more from your business, make it happen with SAP. The AI-powered capabilities of SAP can help you streamline costs, connect with new suppliers, and manage payroll, even when your business is being pulled in different directions. To deliver a quality product at a fair price, while paying your people what they're worth too, so your business can stay unfazed. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
For a limited time at McDonald's, get a Big Mac Extra Value Meal for $8. That means 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, and medium fries, and a drink. We may need to change that jingle.
Prices and participation may vary.
When I go back to as long as I've been paying attention, which is I've been in the market as long as you, John, I hope not longer, but probably about the same. Over 30. It's over 30 years. It's always been like 31% engagement, and it always makes me laugh because it's like we think it's the same 31% every time that number comes out.
Just getting responses, right? Like,
it's a fluid number.
Getting people to share an honest opinion and can you create an environment where the communication tool premise of an engagement survey functions properly? And that's a big thing that we cared about greatly. And what we figured out is if you can make that process of getting measured something that a person enjoys just doing, you will get really good quality data. They want to be honest with you. They want to share information from you. What they don't want is tedium. That is pain avoidance. That's why people don't do this. The tedium of filling out that thing is pain, and they want to avoid that. So if you can take away the tedious nature of it, then people will give you the time. They will give you the attention. It's not going to be much. So you have to have a really sharp UX. You have to be a very defined experience for that user to go through very quickly. But it's there, and they will do it.
Yeah. I think this understanding your business, John, and how this, there's such an obvious, alignment here with the role that you play with your customers. Also in the market, I'm seeing, this represents a bigger trend that's addressing the, whether it's do more with less or, fewer individuals in HR or that headcount not growing, being asked to be a data analyst, a marketer, a recruiter, a therapist, so many things, and service providers bringing the tools that are needed. Customer to customer that may look different, but this is something I'm seeing more and more of. Service providers becoming more tech forward in how they're interfacing with clients.
Totally. Obviously, you and I, off camera, have talked about this as well. And I think that the idea here is really not, and not that you're saying this, but the idea for those that have been making the decision to step into this, I hope it's really born out of the fact that when you have built rapport and relationship with your client base from a consultative standpoint, you ought to be able to bring in measurable, responsive tools that help the organization to achieve some of the things that consultatively we're walking through. So case in point, when you talk about talent management from the broad scope of workforce planning, as an example, which we don't talk about enough, that's a whole other podcast.
Are you tired of talent and HR podcasts that sound like corporate training videos? Same. Talentless is the no-fluff show about hiring, leadership, culture, and what's actually going on in the world of work. Talentless is a podcast for recruiters by recruiters. Hosted by Desiree Goldie and Ashley King, they're smart, occasionally salty, and never afraid to say what everyone else is thinking. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe at talentlesspodcast.com.
But when you look at that and you start to do things anecdotally, it's really trial and error becomes your game plan. And trial and error will get coaches fired in the NFL after 1 week.
Because if you hit the error, if your first trial ends in error, it's problematic.
It's problematic. You're going to go through that press conference. You're going to look like a Shlomo, and ownership is going to get rid of you. Shlomo is an official word, so why on earth would we settle for that when it comes to, and I mean this, the lives of the individuals that you've been entrusted with as an organization? That is craziness to me. We ought to be so serious about their development. Yes, it costs a lot to find talent. Yes, I know it's a money thing, but it's also a people thing. And if the consultants can't drive that home, it is not going to be found in just plugging in some tech module to make this all better. It's just not going to happen.
Right. So how does this take shape? Is this going to continue to be a available product independently? Will it be part of the service offering or both?
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't have the answer just yet.
In classic John fashion, the answer to your or question is yes.
Yes, that's right. That's always really what I do. So Rhabit Analytics will if somebody's logging in today, there's no difference in their experience, right? Everything still is the same, the same workflows. Obviously, with the announcement that just recently happened, Rhabit Analytics is now a Humareso company, so that cross-marketing, cross-messaging now is becoming more unified, right? And that'll continue to take shape over the next couple of months as we update some things. But the user's experience will remain the same.
Yeah. Yep. We have some very happy people. We have wonderful users that I think my favorite part of my job is the feedback we get about our own product. That process is baked in to the experience. We prompt and reward people for telling us exactly what they feel about the product itself, which I highly recommend to anybody in the product space, of baking in a good feedback loop to your end users in a way that you can communicate with them. So they won't feel anything different. They'll have the support of a bigger organization around them with Humareso, and the support of an expanded offering of services and consultative solutions to pair with the things that they buy with us, which is fantastic. And yeah, as we continue to evolve, of course, we'll still be able to support companies that come to us directly and want to have an assessment solution or an engagement solution, performance solution, et cetera. But then for the folks that we're actively consulting with as Humareso, we'll have options there for as their needs change and evolve. Every company kind of picks these things off in their growth pattern. You don't sort of go from 0 to 1 on everything all at once. That's a great way to be really sad and unhappy as an organization, to try to have 4 new HR business processes out all at once. You eat these elephants one bite at a time, but for each of those bites, we'll have something really great for them going through that journey in the solution side of Rhabit.
Yeah. Speaking of elephants, the one in the room, I'm gonna ask this question. I said no surprises before the podcast, but you know what? I'm pulling this out of left field for you from your perspective. Philly, Pittsburgh, culturally, how's that?
Really, it's very interesting you say that. So I want to be clear to say Kevin is in North Carolina, and so
Chapel Hill.
The other co-founder is in Pittsburgh, and that's why he's not on this podcast.
Yeah.
It is really funny because so the team coming over to be a part of Humareso, which is really fun. And I have to tell you, I just want to make sure I give the shout out to those that are looking into acquisition and alignment. It's possible. Like you really can you've got to do the cultural due diligence as well. I remember one of the things Kevin said early on is he watched some things that I had done, like pre-recorded and that sort of thing, to get a better sense of who I am without the formality of chats like this, right? Because I could be putting on, my Mark Cuban Shark Tank kind of loving demeanor, and then once I get you, I'm taking you apart. Sorry, Mark, but but to go and do that research, it's possible. You really can find people with value alignment, but in coming over, one of the things that became really obvious is geographically, because there's which won't be any news, I don't think, for anybody who does know me. There's a blue collarness to where I come from in Philadelphia, growing up in a row home and having this sense of working your way up from where you are, and putting in the time, putting in the education, having a bunch of failures, really just trying to make a dollar out of 2 dimes and all that kind of stuff. That there's alignment in Pittsburgh for that kind of thing as well. That's not off the mark at all. And so I think I found it to be common language really was present from the beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I found you the same here, as whether I'm talking to you via podcast or over the phone or at when we see each other at an event. You're transparent and genuine. So
and honestly, George, that was a huge part of this for us. When we were looking for our next stage of growth and how we would get there, we wanted an organization that was very complementary in its fundamental structure. That's, of course, has to be there. We wanted a services-based organization that had an existing book of business that could use us as a tech enablement platform and then sell into that book of business, and then use us also as another way to expand the surface area at which a new customer could encounter and come into that business, that would be success. That's what it would look like for us. But that none of that happens if the people side of this don't really gel and work. And to that effect, what we have found with John and with Humareso in general is a group of people that just really love working together. And I could tell from the first meetings I got pulled into, and the way that they treated each other, and the warmth that was there, and the lack of pretense of not taking themselves too seriously. They never took themselves too seriously, and that is very us. Like Rhabit is very us. We have a small team of folks that have known each other for a long time. We're very comfortable with each other, and there's a lot of trust. It's a very trust-forward organization. And when I saw those signals as part of our diligence and evaluative process for as we were looking at buyers, it was a green flag all the way. So we were super excited.
That's great. So one or two more questions for you before we wrap up. What I'm asking everybody what they think about the market right now. We're looking down the barrel of 2025. What do you think? How, from an HR tech perspective, HR services perspective, John, what do you think? What's you optimistic, cautiously optimistic, not optimistic?
Went to John first. I was going to push it to Kevin. I am optimistic, not foolishly so, right? Because I know there's moments where I can come across as but genuinely, I'm optimistic for a couple of reasons. One, I think we're going to continue to see a shrinking on the HR tech space. I think that is going to help people be able to more comfortably engage with a more limited number of providers, which will help in the vetting process. I think that we have buyers who have been overwhelmed. George and I especially know. I mean, you walk in and you connect with HR tech that's available at a conference or something like that. Even just walking into the expo floor, you're like, oh my gosh, this is all for HR? Yeah. I think that actually became a limiter to the audience that we're trying to get to. The other thing I would say is I think that we've got shrinking in HR tech because we've got companies that have become much more astute at their value proposition. They've worked out some of the bugs of trying to be everything to everybody and really just owned the highest and best use of how their tool functions. And so, I don't want to say names, right? But if I'm an applicant tracking system, we're really good with high volume. I'm going to stop going after these other types of industries, and I'm just going to lean into the fact that we're high volume. I think you're going to continue to see more of that happen this year, which I think is a positive. From an HR standpoint, though, I'll just say briefly, if we don't figure out how to invest in competency development, I'm going to use that C word, not skill development alone. If we don't figure out how to develop competencies in people, I think those organizations will be the one that suffer the most, and that will be a huge win for those that do have comfort and consistency in the way in which they are investing in talent, because that talent is going to stay. So that optimism is, I see this year a lessening of turnover in some industries. I think we're going to see people sit and stay for a bit longer for those organizations that know how to develop their competencies.
Now, is that because the skills are so fluid and changing so quickly that the competencies are really what we have to rely on?
Yes.
Is that, or is there, okay.
No, and I think, so I'll give you a quick example. So you can, to exactly your point, I think the skills do continue to change. If you're looking at things like technology, quite honestly, if you're looking at business process, there's been so many things. The influence of legal compliance as well, legislation, that kind of stuff has altered some things. And so has made companies have to be nimble in that regard. So you just update your skills in that particular application. The competency of change management, as an example. How do people deal with change? Where does my self-esteem fit into the way in which I'm receiving this ever-moving target? If we don't teach people how to do that, they just will, then they have over the last few years, I'm just leaving. I'm just going to go somewhere else because I can't take how much change there is going on here.
Yeah.
It's in a void that we're bringing these skill considerations to people and not helping them really get grounded in some mechanisms that'll serve them well for a long time to come. We're missing that, and we got to get better.
Okay. I like all that. I like that you're not foolishly optimistic, but you are optimistic. That's all good. Kevin, how do you see the market this year?
Well, I don't know if you'll find any founders that aren't optimists. I think we, by nature, I think it may be a necessary but not sufficient condition to be a founder is to be an optimist in some way. A certain amount of self-belief is requisite. So I am optimistic. I do agree with, especially around the sentiment of the landscape shrinking. I think that'll have to do also with just some of the macro capital environments. It's outside capital is expensive. A lot of the venture capital is dried up on the SaaS front. It's focused that which does exist. There's less funds being raised, less money going into venture. That stuff is going into more of AI, tech forward stuff, away from HR, away from business to business SaaS in general. And so then what you're going to have is this cascading thing where companies of a certain vintage that are maybe 3, 4, 5 years old that were in that second generation or the generation after SaaS 2.0, they're all coming due on either venture debt rounds or venture equity rounds and things like this, where they're going to need their board's going to want some kind of movement. They're either going to have to go public or they're going to sell. PE's going to have to come along and snatch them up. And so I think you'll see some more consolidation. I think you'll start to see roll-ups at a high intensity this year. I do believe that organizations still are chasing the dream of the monolith, which is, can I be? I could talk about this for a long time, but I do think that there's a certain technology has a certain respiratory thing where it goes in and out, right? Like it respirates, like it breathes in and breathes out. So right now 2-3 years ago, what that thing is, everything broke up and you could start a tiny software that was one solution of like the 15 possible solutions that a given industry might use. So these really niche sort of products that would come up over time. And then that when capital is really cheap and free flowing, that happened in abundance. And now that's contracting. And so what it becomes is it's harder to get started, to break through the noise because the market's crowded with all those incumbents that spun up during this time. And so it's harder for new things to come out and emerge and take over for those things. The ones that are in the market will I think in some cases starve out or need to latch onto something or merge into something to grow and move forward. And that's just part of the ecosystem of it. So I do think that I would agree with John in his take around the surface area shrinking a bit in solutions for HR tech at a macro level. We'll see. I think the AI stuff's a bit of an unknown. I think we're still all trying to figure out where hype intersects reality there in the applications of explicitly large language model technology and how that stuff evolves. Everything from the price point to the actual practicality to the accuracy, legislation intersecting with regulatory components. So there's a lot of murk there. I would not even pretend to be able to guess what's going to go there, but it does feel like we're in a certain wild, wild west era of it, which can be fun. That's how the internet was in the early 2000s, late 1990s, right? Like it was the wild, wild west. You didn't know there's laws that you would have violated today it was just normal ways of doing things in those early eras. So we may see that come to fruition. So that'll be interesting to watch how it evolves. But I think that the good news is, I think for the worker, I think you're at a time where there's never been more resources for you either to self-select or for the organization to be able to provide you with at its best price points in existence that can give you, that can educate you, that can improve you, that can support you in what's going on. There's a lot of choice, there's a lot of availability. And I think that's good for people who work. And I think the advent of remote work has a lot of quality of life things that will, it'll ebb and flow a little bit with, kind of COVID was the hyper version of this, and then now we've gone to this hybrid thing, but then some people think they're going to RTO, but turns out they're not really. And so I think that remote work stays and is still a core part of how we function as a society. So I think tools will support that and get better at that, and organizations will get better at that. Service providers will help companies in figuring out how to navigate that successfully, and it probably looks like a mix of good advisement, good consultation, and good tools. So so that leads me to be, I think, generally pretty optimistic about where we're going.
Cool. Yeah, I would say that's all really consistent. I'm asking a lot of folks this question, and I've bumped into a few that were foolishly optimistic. I'll say that, but they may be in categories where they're high volume hiring or something where they get to be a little.
They
more,
optimistic
need to be
optimistic because they need high volume hiring to be happy in the market.
Yeah. But it's I think we've been waiting for the market to consolidate more. It hasn't really happened the last couple of years, or I should say the pace of it has been on par with the last 10 years. I think for all those reasons, Kevin, that you mentioned, we're probably going to see more of that today. And I can tell you there's a lot of shopping going on, and we'll see how much buying takes place. But there's no real downside for the buyer to wait. So if the market starts to get better, they move then, and if the market doesn't get better, they're able to wait it out. Whereas the sellers don't have so much patience. So I think it should be an interesting year. So I just want to back up and say again, congratulations on this deal. I'm looking forward to coming back and maybe checking in 3-6 months to see how everything's going. I'm looking forward to learning more about Rhabit. And
I hope in 3 months it's not was the worst mistake I ever made.
It won't be. It won't be. Yeah. And thank you both so much for your time. I know how much work you have to do having just put this together and how valuable your time is. Thank you both for telling your story here with WorkTech.
It's been a pleasure, George. Really great meeting you. Loved it.
Terrific. Thank you both. And thanks to everyone, wherever you're watching or listening, out on the Work Defined Podcast Network or YouTube or oneworktech.com. And until next time, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the WorkTech Podcast. Visit us at oneworktech.com and find out why WorkTech is considered the most trusted source of market intelligence and strategic advice for WorkTech. Subscribe to the WorkTech YouTube channel for video episodes and exclusive content. And be sure to check out the entire Work Defined podcast network at wrkdefine.com for more podcasts on the world of work.